I realize that I'm aging and I'm going to continue. Yes, you are. And realize that life is not what I thought it would be when I was younger. That's true too. I thought I had more time and I'm disappointed. Yep. Everybody's going to realize that at some point. Or they realize they don't have much time and they're happy with it. And I don't mean that in terms of suicide at all. I mean, so again, I have in my ministry a lot of older people, and people get to a certain age, their health gets to a certain point, their quality of life gets to a certain point, and they just look at me and say, "I'm ready to go." I say, "I understand." When did you discover that you were aging, and how did you react or cope? Personal question. That's good. I on one hand, it's sort of a slow dawning, and on the other hand, it comes with episodes. So when my father died, I always sort of imagine it. We're all walking towards this cliff, and when you see lots of people ahead of you, it's like, oh, and then you watch them disappear. My sister died when she was 53, and wow. Hmm. So, and then And then you begin to realize that I mentioned this in a video that I haven't released yet. It's not a no wait, no ads either. I was going to release it today, but I decided to release the Jordan Peterson video. I look around, I look at who's going to Synod, and there's a lot of names I don't know. And I compared it to who went to Synod in 1999. Most of the names I did know, or many of the names I did know, at least of pastors. So you begin to realize that, yeah, things are changing. And then you begin to realize that there's a bunch of things that you always thought you would achieve or become that you haven't, and a window is closed, and you'll never get there. That's when I sort of began to think a lot more about the resurrection, and about a lot more about the life of the age to come, and a lot more about, I began to lean in and derive Christian hope from thinking about the fact that this is just a chapter. And I think about the age to come a fair amount, and I've got lots of questions. But what I mostly lean into is trust, because I go to the analogy that an unborn infant in the womb knows very little about life outside the womb. We know very little about life in the age to come. And the truth is, if you would try to communicate to that infant in the womb what their life would be like, it'd be pointless. And then there's all these like mental things about, if I at 60 could go back and talk to myself at 19. I answered that question here. Chad asked it, and a lot of people didn't like the answer, but it was completely true. What would you say to your 19-year-old self? Oh, you'll have a hot wife. Because that's what my 19-year-old self was caring about. Most of the rest of what's really important to me now, my 19-year-old self couldn't really process. There's something to age that, if you pay attention and you grow in wisdom, you learn. And one of the things that you learn as someone who is a professional communicator, like I am, the limits of communication. So, what can God communicate to me about the life of the age to come? Probably not a lot, in the same way that I can't communicate very well to an unborn fetus or even to my dog. But a parent of that unborn child will raise that child and cares for that child and helps that child grow. And I believe that this is what's coming for me in Christ in the age to come. So if I could communicate to one of my unborn children, which I do, which I did. I mean, my wife's there and, her belly's great, and stroke the belly, and they can hear our voices. They won't know what we're saying, but they can hear our voices. And then when they come out and they don't consciously think it, but, they feel comfort because, oh, there's mom's voice. There's dad's voice. Here's mom's smell. Here's mom's skin. This is what it means to nurse. And so I believe that God will, just as God has brought me through this life now, and many of the hard things, he's turned to my benefit. When I think about what it means to die, and I trust him. If I can trust him because he's used hard things for my benefit, and he's taught me that faithfulness is worth it. I love the new theme that Peterson is on in terms of sacrifice. And Peterson's still a little bit stoic. There's not enough grace in him. And towards the end, Russell Brand will bring in more grace. And I think part of what's good about that, and I hope I have the determination to make it do a commentary all the way through that video, is because Peterson struggles with grace. He's really a preacher of works, righteousness. But Brand knows something about grace, because it's the woman who barges into the banquet at the Pharisee's house and washes Jesus' feet. And Jesus says, those who have been forgiven much love much. So, and for me, it's easy because I completely understand. I have had a great life. I had great parents. I had good years growing up. God has given me good things. And so is it easier for me to trust him than many people who I've had on my channel that have had hard stories? And there are a lot of people in this corner that have had hard stories. Now, here's the problem with being a pillar of a community. You're going to get named. Grim Grizz has a hard story. Chad the Alcoholic has a hard story. Many of the Randos conversations that I've had, people have had hard stories. It's easy for me to trust because he's been good to me. It's hard for some of you to trust because life has been hard. And so that's where I want to lend you the faith that I have. And that's why I preach. To believe that he will birth you into a new creation. And to now in faith continue to strive towards the kinds of righteousness, the kinds of obedience, the kinds of stuff that Jordan Peterson wants to lead people into. There's different ways to deal with this works righteousness issue, but it all flows from his mercy. And so how do you cope with it? You cope with it with the gospel. You cope with it with the gospel. That's how you cope with it. Because I look at I look at atheists. I look at people who are at least ostensibly trying to believe that the grave is the end. And I say, oh, what do you do with your life? Because on one hand, think about the parent who suddenly discovers they're pregnant. Either you caused the pregnancy or you are pregnant. And you think, I want to max my life out now. Abort the baby. A lot of people do that. It's not the only reason abortions happen, but it certainly is part of it. That baby is inconvenient. You're darn right that baby's inconvenient. You have no idea yet how inconvenient that baby's going to be. And the inconvenience of that relationship is going to compound. And so some people abandon. Some people never show up. Some people check out even if they don't leave. Some people, one way or another, you abandon that relationship and you leave that poor kid to its own devices out there in the world. Because you've only got one life to live. YOLO. If in fact you believe in the life of the age to come, if in fact you believe that your faithfulness, even to the inconvenient, will be rewarded in this life and the next, realized salvation, anticipated salvation. See, part of the limitation of Jordan's preaching is he can really only lean into realized salvation. And there's enough meat on the bone there to make a point. But there's also in this age realities of, one of the most beautiful things about Jordan Peterson, to the best that we know, is that he loves his wife and she loves him. And he hasn't, I'm sure that there'd be plenty of temptations to, now that he's rich and famous, to go look for a younger unit. There are certain very high-profile men that have serially divorced their wives and even gone to try to sleep with high-status courtesans. Can't imagine. That's natural behavior. And it all leads from looking at death. And so part of how old men try to feel young again is to sleep with a hot young woman. If you believe in the resurrection and you believe in the age to come, you have resources to deal with the fact that you are growing older. And you have resources to deal with, to lean into being responsible and obedient and faithful to inconvenient people, many of whom might be your family. And if you do that, you will, number one, realize. Someone sent me, I should put it on Vanderclips and it should put it in a video. There's a remarkable Scott Adams, the dude who is so down on marriage and women, and, the guy is burdened. And, there's one little video. He says, the happiest time of my life was when I took my stepdaughter to soccer practice. This guy, it's a stepdaughter. Someone might say, oh, you cuck. How dare you take somebody else's offspring to soccer? And Scott Adams basically says, the most meaningful part of my life was my relationship with my stepdaughter. And I'll tell you. So even it scales. Even this dog I've got right here. Now, I'm not going to keep this dog. My wife doesn't want us to keep the dog or do another dog because, dogs are inconvenient and stuff. And I agree with her. There's times when it's like, oh, I got to take care of that darn dog. But, oh, gosh, do I love this little dog. This is an amazing little dog. And this dog walks off the leash with me. I can train this dog to do just about anything. It is phenomenal. Now that I've learned a little bit of dog training, and now that this dog has been basically bred to be just optimized training, it's like, this is an incredible animal. But, I don't love the dog because the dog can do incredible things. I love the dog because I love the dog, because I've had a lot of other dogs that were just not trainable for anything, and I love them too. And I cried along with my kids when those little dogs died, and the big dogs, and the guinea pigs. So if you lean into the age to come, yeah, it's worth it.
There's almost nothing I ever did as a single person, even if I was in a relationship. There was almost nothing I ever did that was as fun as getting up on a Saturday morning and watching my stepdaughter at the time play soccer in a non-competitive, intramural kind of a team. There's nothing I did that was more fun than that. And was it easy? Nope. There was driving and waking up and getting food and making sure everybody's taken care of, and you got to bring chairs down and cancel everything else, and it's a lot of work. But there's nothing I did that was more that I felt like deeply, deeply enjoyed. Just watching my stepdaughter play soccer. That's it. Couldn't top that. The second thing, the best moments ever. Do you ever think about what you would remember if your life flashed in front of you like you're dying? I don't know if that really happens. But do you ever think, like, what do you call your life? Because I find that there are moments that I call my life. Do you ever have that? Like, I don't think if my life were flashing before my eyes, I don't think I would think about my Dilbert career. As 35 years of doing it every day, I don't think I would think about it. I'll tell you what I would think about. If I can. I would think about watching Disney movies with my stepkids. That's it. That's what I would think about. But movies suck, and those days are over. So, not to end on on that note,